You've probably experienced it without thinking twice. Someone you've never met announces they're getting married, winning an award, or taking a break from the spotlight, and somehow your emotions change as if the news belongs to your own life. That reaction seems strange when you stop and think about it. After all, this person doesn't know your name, has never spoken to you, and will likely never realize you exist. Yet your brain can still make the connection feel remarkably personal. What's even more surprising is that neuroscience suggests this isn't simply a failure of logic. The human brain evolved to build emotional connections with familiar faces, and modern media has learned how to activate those ancient systems in ways our ancestors never experienced. But here's what most people never realize. The more intensely someone obsesses over a celebrity, the less that obsession may be about fame itself. Instead, it can reveal hidden patterns involving identity, belonging, emotional needs, and the quiet ways your mind tries to make sense of your life. Think about that for a second. What if every interview you watch, every update you eagerly check, and every emotional reaction you have is actually revealing something far more important than the celebrity? Because once you understand what your brain is really chasing, you'll never look at celebrity obsession the same way again. Before we explore the psychology behind this behavior, it's important to remove one common misconception. If you've ever become deeply invested in a celebrity, it doesn't automatically mean you're shallow, lonely, or unable to separate fantasy from reality. In fact, your brain may be responding exactly as it was designed to. Humans evolved in small social groups where paying close attention to influential people increased the chances of survival. Knowing who inspired others, who led the group, and who could be trusted was psychologically valuable. The world changed much faster than the brain did. Instead of seeing a few familiar faces every day, you're now exposed to actors, musicians, athletes, and creators thousands of times through phones, streaming platforms, interviews, and social media. Your ancient social systems are operating in a completely modern environment. Now here's where things become fascinating. Familiarity has a powerful effect on the mind. The more often you see someone's face, hear their voice, or learn about their life, the more your brain begins treating them as a psychologically meaningful part of your social world. That doesn't mean you believe they're your friend. Rather, your emotional systems gradually respond as though they're someone important in your environment. This process happens so naturally that most people never notice it unfolding. For many viewers, these connections remain harmless and even inspiring. But for others, admiration grows into something much stronger, something that influences emotions, daily habits, and even personal identity. So what separates casual appreciation from deep obsession? The answer begins with one of the most fundamental questions the human mind ever asks. Who am I? The question driving this entire story isn't why celebrities attract attention. They've always been talented, successful, or influential in some way. The real mystery is why one person casually enjoys their work while another feels emotionally connected to someone they've never actually met. At first, you might assume the answer is personality. Maybe some people are simply more emotional or more impressionable. But researchers discovered that explanation barely scratches the surface. The deeper answer lies in how the brain constructs meaning from the people it pays attention to. Think about that for a second. Every strong emotional reaction toward a celebrity, whether it's admiration, protectiveness, jealousy, or even heartbreak, may be revealing hidden information about your own psychological needs rather than the celebrity themselves. Now this changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why am I obsessed with this person?" a far more revealing question becomes, "What is my mind trying to accomplish through this attachment?" That single question shifts the focus away from fame and toward the architecture of your own mind. Everything you're about to learn answers that one question, and it begins with a psychological process so fundamental that it shapes your goals, your relationships, and even the story you tell yourself about who you are. Once you understand it, celebrity obsession starts making far more sense than you ever imagined. Every person carries an invisible story about who they are. It isn't written anywhere, yet it quietly shapes nearly every decision, ambition, and relationship. Psychologists call this your identity, and your brain works constantly to keep that story coherent. Identity is much more than your name or career. It's the collection of beliefs, values, experiences, and future aspirations that answer one lifelong question: who am I becoming? Whenever that answer feels uncertain, your mind instinctively begins searching for direction. Now, here's where things become fascinating. Celebrities often represent qualities we admire before we've fully developed them ourselves. One person symbolizes confidence, another represents creativity, someone else embodies resilience or freedom. Those qualities become psychological possibilities rather than simple entertainment. Imagine a student who starts adopting the habits of a successful entrepreneur or speaking like a favorite actor. It may appear to be imitation, but the brain is often experimenting with a possible future version of itself. Here's what researchers discovered. Developmental psychologists have found that people frequently use admired role models to explore identity, especially during adolescence and major life transitions. The brain compares different lifestyles and values before deciding which ones genuinely feel authentic. In simple terms, your mind isn't only asking whether you like the celebrity, it's quietly asking whether parts of that person's character belong in your own story. But if identity explains why admiration begins, what transforms admiration into genuine emotional attachment? The answer lies within another ancient psychological system. Long before you understood language, your brain was already learning who made you feel safe. Those early experiences gradually formed your attachment system, shaping how you seek comfort, trust, and emotional security throughout the rest of your life. Attachment is the mind's way of answering an important question: who can I turn to when I need reassurance? When relationships feel stable, this system works quietly in the background. When emotional needs go unmet, the brain naturally searches for other dependable sources of comfort. Now here's where things become fascinating. Celebrities often appear in your life with remarkable consistency. You hear their voice, watch their interviews, follow their routines, and celebrate their achievements. Over time, that repeated exposure creates a powerful sense of familiarity. Psychologists call this a parasocial relationship. Decades of research have shown that one-sided relationships with public figures can produce genuine emotional responses because the brain processes repeated familiarity as socially meaningful, even without direct interaction. Think about someone who listens to the same artist whenever life becomes overwhelming. The music isn't the only source of comfort. The familiar voice, personality, and emotional memories attached to that artist become part of the brain's coping system. This doesn't mean celebrity attachment is unhealthy. For many people, it offers inspiration and temporary emotional relief. But when these one-sided bonds begin replacing real relationships, the mind starts depending on an illusion to meet genuine emotional needs. But that's only part of the story. Emotional attachment explains why a celebrity matters. It still doesn't explain why your attention keeps returning to them. For that, we need to examine the brain's reward system and one remarkable chemical that quietly drives human behavior. Have you ever picked up your phone intending to check one notification, then found yourself watching celebrity interviews, scrolling through fan pages, and reading comments half an hour later? That pattern feels accidental, but your brain may have been following a biological script. Many people call dopamine the pleasure chemical, but that's only part of the story. Dopamine is primarily involved in anticipation. It motivates you to keep searching because your brain believes something rewarding could appear at any moment. Here's what researchers discovered. Neuroscientists found that dopamine responds especially strongly to unpredictable rewards rather than guaranteed ones. When you never know when your favorite celebrity will post exciting news, your brain stays alert, expecting the next rewarding surprise. Think about refreshing a celebrity's profile after hearing rumors about a new project. Most visits reveal nothing unusual. Then suddenly there's an announcement, a behind-the-scenes photo, or a personal update. That unexpected reward reinforces the habit of checking again. In simple language, your brain learns that uncertainty can be exciting. You're no longer searching only for information. You're chasing the possibility of discovering something emotionally satisfying. The anticipation itself becomes rewarding enough to keep the cycle alive. Now this changes everything. Dopamine explains why your attention keeps returning, but attention alone doesn't create obsession. What transforms millions of individual fans into fiercely loyal communities is another ancient psychological force that has shaped human behavior for thousands of years: the need to belong. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging to a group. People who were accepted had greater protection, shared resources, and stronger chances of surviving. Although the world has changed, your brain still treats belonging as one of its highest priorities. This is why celebrity fandoms often become much more than shared entertainment. They create communities where people celebrate the same achievements, understand the same references, and experience the same emotional highs and lows together. Think about someone wearing merchandise from their favorite artist, or joining thousands of others to discuss a new album online. On the surface, they're supporting a celebrity. Psychologically, they're also reinforcing their membership in a group that makes them feel understood. Here's what researchers discovered. Social psychologists have shown that even small group identities can increase trust, loyalty, and emotional attachment. Once people identify with a community, they naturally begin protecting the values and symbols that represent it. In simple terms, the celebrity gradually becomes more than a person. They become the emotional center of a community. Criticism, directed at that public figure, can begin to feel surprisingly personal, because your brain links the celebrity with your own sense of belonging. But here's another psychological layer. Belonging explains why fan communities become so meaningful, yet it still doesn't explain why people sometimes defend celebrities even when convincing evidence challenges their beliefs. To understand that, we need to explore one of the mind's most powerful thinking shortcuts. Imagine discovering credible evidence that your favorite celebrity behaved in a way that completely contradicts the image you've admired for years. Surprisingly, your first reaction may not be acceptance. Instead, your mind often searches for reasons to protect the belief it already holds. This happens because the brain relies on cognitive biases. These are mental shortcuts that help us process enormous amounts of information quickly. While they save time and mental effort, they can also distort the way we interpret reality. One of the strongest examples is confirmation bias. Once you've formed a positive impression of someone, your brain naturally notices information that supports that belief while giving less attention to evidence that challenges it. Think about reading comments after a celebrity controversy. If you're emotionally invested, you may immediately trust people defending them while questioning reports that suggest wrongdoing. It often feels like objective thinking, even though your emotions are quietly influencing the process. Here's what researchers discovered. Studies in cognitive psychology consistently show that existing beliefs shape how people evaluate new information. Rather than changing beliefs first, the brain frequently adjusts its interpretation of the evidence to maintain emotional consistency. In simple terms, your mind isn't always trying to be perfectly accurate. Sometimes it's trying to protect a meaningful emotional attachment. But if your brain can unconsciously reshape reality to preserve that connection, what happens when the celebrity becomes a symbol of your own future? That's where motivation enters the story. Every human behavior is driven by a reason, even when that reason isn't immediately obvious. Motivation is the psychological force that directs your attention, shapes your choices, and pushes you toward what your brain believes will improve your life. Now here's where things become fascinating. A celebrity rarely represents fame alone. To your mind, they often symbolize a future you secretly hope to experience. One person represents confidence. Another represents financial success. Someone else represents freedom or resilience. Imagine a young entrepreneur who watches interviews with a successful business leader every morning. They aren't simply entertained by the stories, they're absorbing a vision of what their own future could become if they continue moving forward. Here's what researchers discovered. Studies on motivation and possible selves suggest that people work harder when they can clearly imagine a desirable future version of themselves. Role models make those imagined futures feel more vivid and psychologically attainable. In simple language, the celebrity becomes a bridge between your present life and your desired future. The stronger that vision becomes, the more emotionally invested you may feel in the person who represents it. But here's the unexpected twist. Motivation can inspire remarkable personal growth, yet it can also create an invisible trap. When admiration quietly transforms into constant comparison, your brain begins measuring your everyday life against someone else's carefully presented success. That comparison changes far more than most people realize. Whether you notice it or not, your brain is constantly comparing. It compares your progress, appearance, achievements, and relationships with the people around you, because comparison has always helped humans understand where they stand within a social world. Today's media has dramatically changed that process. Instead of comparing yourself with a handful of people in your community, you're now comparing your ordinary life with celebrities whose greatest moments are carefully selected and repeatedly displayed. At first, those comparisons can feel inspiring. Watching someone overcome failure or achieve extraordinary success may encourage you to dream bigger. The comparison creates hope by showing that remarkable accomplishments are possible. But here's what most people never realize. The same comparison that inspires you can slowly become destructive. If your brain constantly measures your private struggles against someone else's public victories, dissatisfaction begins to grow almost unnoticed. Researchers studying social comparison have consistently found that frequent upward comparisons can reduce self-esteem and increase feelings of inadequacy, especially when the person being admired appears permanently successful or flawless. In simple terms, your brain forgets one important truth. You're comparing your complete reality with someone else's edited reality. Once you recognize that difference, admiration becomes healthier because it shifts from envy toward learning. But there is one final psychological layer that explains why these connections can feel emotionally comforting during life's hardest moments. Life constantly asks your brain to manage disappointment, uncertainty, loneliness, and stress. To cope with those emotions, the mind develops strategies that restore a sense of stability. Psychologists refer to this process as emotional regulation. Now here's where things become fascinating. Many people don't realize that celebrity content can quietly become part of that coping system. A familiar voice, an interview, or a favorite song may provide comfort simply because the brain has linked it with emotional relief. Imagine someone returning home after a difficult day. Without thinking, they watch videos from their favorite creator or listen to the same artist they've relied on for years. The habit isn't random. Their mind has learned to associate that person with calmness and familiarity. Here's what researchers discovered. Studies on emotional regulation suggest that familiar media and admired public figures can temporarily reduce stress by creating feelings of connection, predictability, and psychological comfort, especially during emotionally challenging periods. In simple language, the celebrity becomes an emotional anchor rather than a solution. They may help you regain balance for a while, but they cannot replace the deeper support that comes from meaningful relationships, purpose, and personal growth. Now this changes everything. Identity, attachment, dopamine, belonging, cognitive bias, motivation, comparison, and emotional regulation all point toward one surprising conclusion. Celebrity obsession is rarely about the celebrity alone, but what does that realization actually mean for your everyday life? When you step back and connect everything we've explored, a surprising pattern appears. Celebrity obsession isn't usually created by one psychological flaw. Instead, it emerges when several perfectly normal mental systems begin reinforcing one another over time. Think about your daily environment. Social media algorithms learn what captures your attention. News platforms reward emotional engagement, and entertainment industries constantly keep familiar faces in front of you. Your brain isn't simply making independent choices. It's responding to an environment designed to keep you engaged. But here's what most people never realize. The same psychological systems that can pull someone toward unhealthy obsession are the very systems that help people build friendships, pursue ambitious goals, and learn from inspiring role models. The mechanisms themselves aren't dangerous. The direction they're pointed in is what truly matters. This changes how you should interpret your own behavior. Instead of asking why you're so attached to a celebrity, ask what emotional need that attachment is trying to satisfy. That question replaces self-criticism with genuine self-awareness. If admiration gives you hope, perhaps you're searching for possibility. If it brings comfort, perhaps you're longing for connection. If someone else's success consumes your thoughts, perhaps your own ambitions are asking for more attention than you've been giving them. Once you recognize the need beneath the obsession, your focus begins to shift. The celebrity stops being the destination and becomes a clue, pointing toward the parts of your own life that deserve more care, purpose, and attention. But there's one final realization that ties this entire story together. Perhaps the most surprising discovery is this. The celebrity you believed you were trying to understand was never the true subject of the story. The deeper story has always been about you and the quiet patterns shaping your inner world. Every feeling you experienced was real. The excitement, admiration, disappointment, and inspiration all existed inside your mind. But those emotions were never created by fame alone. They were shaped by your memories, your values, your fears, and your hopes for the future. Think back to the moment this video began. You may have assumed that becoming emotionally invested in a celebrity meant something was wrong with you. Psychology offers a far more compassionate explanation. It suggests that your brain has been doing what it evolved to do, searching for meaning, safety, and direction. That doesn't mean every attachment is healthy. When admiration begins replacing your own ambitions, relationships, or identity, it quietly limits the life you're capable of building. The goal isn't to stop admiring remarkable people. It's to ensure they remain a source of inspiration rather than a substitute for your own growth. Now, this changes everything. The qualities you admire most were never meant to stay attached to someone else's story. Confidence, resilience, discipline, creativity, and courage become truly valuable only when they begin shaping your own life. And perhaps that's the hidden truth behind celebrity obsession. The person you've been watching so closely may have been reflecting the person you've been searching for all along. We began with a simple observation. How could someone you've never met make you feel joy, disappointment, excitement, or even heartbreak? As you've seen, the answer has very little to do with celebrity status, and almost everything to do with how the human mind is wired. Celebrity obsession isn't simply about admiration. It's often a reflection of your identity, your emotional needs, your desire for belonging, and the future you're hoping to create. Once you recognize those hidden patterns, you stop judging yourself and start understanding yourself. So the next time you find yourself constantly thinking about a public figure, pause for a moment. Instead of asking, "Why am I so obsessed?" ask yourself, "What part of me is this person reflecting?" That single question may reveal more about your mind than years of casual observation ever could. If today's discovery changed the way you think, let me know in the comments. Have you ever caught yourself becoming emotionally attached to a celebrity? And after watching this video, do you see the reason differently? If you enjoy uncovering the hidden psychology behind everyday human behavior, make sure you subscribe because we're only scratching the surface of what your mind is capable of understanding. And if today's discovery resonated with you, click the next video to explore the hidden psychology of why your brain constantly compares you to other people, and continue uncovering how your mind really works.